Minh Thúy xin kính chào quý vị hôm nay thứ Sáu, 28 tháng 6, 2024. Đến với VATV hôm nay gồm có phỏng vấn đặc biệt và nhạc lá bồ đề. Kính thưa quý vị, trong khoảng năm 1962 đến năm 1963, những biến chuyển ở Sài Gòn và ở các vùng nông thôn đã khiến cho một số sĩ quan Việt Nam, thí dụ như Đại Úy Nguyễn Tùy, cho rằng không nên rút các sư đoàn ở miền Trung đi để Cộng sản có thể dễ dàng tiến vào. Nhưng cùng lúc đó lại có một số sĩ quan Việt Nam khác như tướng Tôn Thất Đính lại cho rằng quân đội Việt Nam đã đủ mạnh và vì thế có phối trí cách nào đi nữa cũng chẳng có ảnh hưởng mạnh gì đến tình hình an ninh. Không chỉ ở phía Việt Nam, cả phía Mỹ cũng không có cái nhìn giống nhau. Cơ quan dân sự United States Operation Mission cho rằng tình hình miền Trung đang mất dần an ninh, nhưng Bộ Viện trợ Quân sự lại cho rằng miền Trung rất an ninh. Những suy nghĩ khác biệt đó đã khiến cho Phòng Thông tin Hoa Kỳ gửi Frank Scotton về miền Trung để tìm hiểu. Lần này khi về miền Trung, ông Frank Scotton được toàn quyền tự do hành động để thăm dò vùng Long An. Thay vì hành động một mình, đơn thương độc mã như những lần công tác trước, lần này ông Frank Scotton quyết định thăm dò bằng cách khác. Ông quyết định tuyển mộ và huấn luyện nhân viên ngay trong các ấp ông thăm dò. Dưới sự chỉ huy của Scotton, 3 toán, mỗi toán khoảng 7-8 người, sẽ tản ra để thăm dò 3 ấp khác nhau. Sau khi thăm dò tình hình ban ngày, ban đêm 3 toán sẽ họp lại để cùng nghỉ đêm, mỗi đêm ở một địa điểm khác nhau. Những địa điểm này cũng nằm trong số 3 ấp thăm dò. Ông Frank Scotton cho rằng như thế, khi tiến vào ấp thì Cộng sản sẽ là người xâm lược từ ngoài tiến vào, và phe miền Nam sẽ giữ vai trò chính đáng của những người chống xâm lược. Cuộc thăm dò các ấp Long An là một bước ngoặt quyết định trong cuộc chiến ở nông thôn. Cách hoạt động thích đáng và thành công của các đội thăm dò Long An về sau đã được bổ túc để biến thành các đội hoạt động nhân dân, mà CIA đã áp dụng cho gần như toàn thể các hoạt động chống cộng ở vùng nông thôn trong toàn cõi miền Nam Việt Nam. Sau đây, Minh Thúy mời quý vị tiếp tục theo dõi phần 5 phỏng vấn đặc biệt về tình hình Việt Nam trong những năm 1962 đến năm 1963 qua các công tác của ông Frank Scotton do Phan Lê Dũng, Võ Thành Nhân và Minh Thúy thực hiện.
But the Vietnamese, do you think the Vietnamese sees the problem, or do they see the problem and have to do it because there's an order from the central government, or do they not see these things just like the American?
I thought that some Vietnamese saw the problem. I thought that Captain Thuy, for example, who commanded that 4th Independent Company, I thought he definitely saw it. I thought that Tran Van Hai, later police director and then finally 7th Division commander, where he committed suicide, 1975. He was the province chief in Phu Yen when I met him, and then temporarily in command of the 47th Regiment. I thought he was very sharp, very perceptive, and he saw that. But then others, I didn't think saw it. It was almost as if they thought that whatever the communists did would be irrelevant because now they had independence and they could organize, and they were ready to do whatever needed to be done. And I thought I met Tôn Thất Đính, for example. I don't want to be disparaging of someone, but I could hardly believe that he was a general officer when I met him. I thought he was.
And that was at the time you were only 22 something, and this your perception by then that he was very incompetent, so say.
Yeah. Well, let me mention quickly something else. One consequence of there were so many consequential items falling out from the 1963 murder of the president and things like that. But one was that there'd been some discussion in the White House about whether or not security was deteriorating in any part of the country. And Rufus Phillips had a report from the USOM representative in Long An province indicating that there was real deterioration there, fairly close to Saigon. So in December of '63, before I was allowed to go back to Central Vietnam, I was brought down to Saigon, and Ev Baumgartner had obtained, some pistols from the CIA station that could be used in a concealed fashion. And he said, I don't know exactly how you want to do it, but I want you to do a quick survey in this area of Long An, from Ta Nan, the province capital, to the My Tho border, province border area, or Din Tung it was called at that time. An area of 30 or 40 hamlets. MacV says it's secure. USOM says it's not. Can you get in there and find out what's happening? So I said, yeah, sure. So that is a precursor to what my brother Frank Snip mentioned as work with small teams. For the first time then, I was given responsibility to go into an area, find out what would happen, and do it any way I wanted to. So I organized 3 teams and equipped them and everything and said, okay, we'll go in here, talk with someone from every family in a hamlet. And we'll work in 3 adjoining hamlets at the same time. And at nighttime, we'll regroup into one of those 3 hamlets, so that we'll have maybe 20, 24 people for nighttime defense. In the daytime, you'll be back out with 6 or 8 people in a team. And here are the basic questions I want you to ask to find out. I want you to develop a history. What has happened in that hamlet? What do the people think is the most important thing in their lives? What we did find over a roughly 3-week period is that Rufus Phillips and USOM representative had been correct. There was tremendous deterioration in that area. The communists, led by a woman fighter, were ascendant. The front barbed wire sections of all the so-called strategic hamlets had been retained, but the side and rear portions of the defensive works were all gone. There was one local force, triangular-shaped, mud-walled fort representing the government, flying the government flag. But they never went outside of their little triangular area. They were isolated. And by the way, about a month after I left, they were overrun. So that report went up into the embassy and had some fallout effect. But it was also educative for me, because I learned from that we can organize, at least on a local tactical level, we can organize as well as the communists. I wouldn't say better, but we can do it just as well. And at that point of the war, we can have better equipment, and it's possible to make a difference. So going about a month or so later, then being released, you might say, to return back up to Central Vietnam, and seeing this fellow Major Kelly that I had mentioned previously. Kelly told me that a former Viet Minh named Nguyen Duy Be, I mentioned his name because he's deceased now, had approached the district chief in Trung Ia and asked, feared the return of the communists, and his punishment, and he had asked for some help in organizing a self-defense unit. So Kelly brought me down to the hamlet where this fellow met. Diminutive, but vibrant with personality. And I wanted to meet him because I didn't want to just sign off on, okay, I'm going to go to friends in Special Forces and the CIA station and ask for weapons and, you know, a supplement for meals during training and things. And then I find out the guy's a bum. But he was very impressive. And so that was the start of a local self-defense force that, according to the concept that we worked up together, Winsby Bear, Major Kelly, and myself, would be mobile at that point within a district area, never going beyond that district, but mobile within that district, working, as I had done in Long Island Province, working during the daytime, maybe in 3 different adjoining hamlets. And I say working by helping people, or just being friendly, you know, visiting the schools, passing out things, doing anything at all, but being an active presence. And at nighttime, being in one hamlet, grouped together. Not in a fort, not in an outpost, in the hamlet. So if the communists had to come in, they were the ones that would have to enter a hostile hamlet. See? And that was the beginning of what eventually, with a lot of bureaucratic adjustments.
When you're talking to the villagers, are they more so-called political aware of the situation? Are they actively choosing side, communists or nationalists, or do they don't know anything? And
well, there were, in any location you could find that there were some people who were in, I think, significant part because of family connections. There were some people who were supporters of the communists. There were others also for personal reasons, family members who had perhaps been killed by the communists, or frustration at communist requests for assistance in terms of foodstuffs and things like that, that were not at all supportive of the communists. But in any case, absent meaningful government presence in the hamlets, they had to be responsive.
Minh Thúy xin kính chào quý vị. Hôm nay thứ Sáu, 5 tháng 7, 2024. Đến với VATV hôm nay gồm có phỏng vấn đặc biệt và nhạc lá bồ đề. Kính thưa quý vị, khi đã tiếp xúc gần gũi với những người dân ở thôn quê, ông Frank Scotton đã thấy rõ mức độ ảnh hưởng sâu rộng của Cộng sản. Trái hẳn với sự suy nghĩ lúc trước của ông cho rằng Cộng sản chỉ mới bắt đầu nhúm rễ sau năm 1960, sau khi mặt trận giải phóng thành hình. Ở Bình Định thì Cộng sản đã có mặt ở đó từ năm 1945, khi Việt Nam còn nằm dưới sự đô hộ của người Pháp. Đối với người dân Bình Định, Cộng sản đã bám rễ sâu từ cả 20 năm trước thập niên năm 1960. Vậy thì tại sao người dân ở nông thôn lại theo Cộng sản? Họ có sự lựa chọn không? Và nếu có, thì tại sao họ không ủng hộ chính phủ miền Nam? Bên cạnh những suy nghĩ về truyền thống, về sự chọn lựa quốc gia hay Cộng sản, trong quá khứ những cuộc biểu tình chống đối của Phật giáo và phản ứng của chính quyền đối với những chống đối đó cũng bồi thêm những suy nghĩ đã ghi lại từ trước. Frank Scotton nhận định rằng người Công giáo và người Phật giáo đều rất đau buồn về sự việc đã xảy ra và cho rằng chính quyền có thể tránh những chuyện đáng tiếc đó. Năm 1963 là năm của những bất đồng ý kiến lan rộng, những phản ứng vụng về, thiếu uyển chuyển của chính quyền, những quyết định sai lầm quân sự khi tái phối trí các sư đoàn ra khỏi các điểm trọng yếu và đã làm suy giảm tiềm lực của miền Nam Việt Nam. Trước tình hình náo loạn của các cuộc biểu tình của sinh viên, học sinh, Phật giáo, Công giáo và đảo chính sắp xảy ra, và Cộng sản ngày càng hoạt động bạo dạn hơn ở các vùng nông thôn. Một nhân viên Hoa Kỳ hoạt động ở Việt Nam đang tiếp xúc gần gũi với người dân đã thấy gì, nghĩ gì. Minh Thúy mời quý vị theo dõi phần 6 phỏng vấn đặc biệt qua tình hình Việt Nam trong những đầu năm thập niên năm 1960 qua các công tác của ông Frank Scotton do Phan Lê Dũng, Võ Thành Nhân và Minh Thúy thực hiện.
So actually, they don't have a political awareness of whatever. It seems like they are making the decision based on the historical thing that their family are doing. It's whether the communists or nationalists.
Now, in some areas, like in Kinwa, where I had zero experience, but Tran Kop Chau used to talk to me about it. He said in some areas, from 1940 onward, roughly, there had been, to a certain degree, off and on communist governance in some few local areas, and that was the case, I know, in Bin Din and Fuyan and Quang Ai too. So some people were offended by that, but for other people, my landlord, for example, he said that during that period of the war against the French, the postal system, that was a Viet Minh postal system.
Yes.
If a road needed repaired,
yes,
the Viet Minh organized people to repair the road, all those kinds of things. And he said, some people don't like that, but he said some people still respect it. And he was never very clear with me which group he might be in, but he was very supportive of me and very, very helpful. And
when you talk about that specific landlord, how does he feel about the government side as versus the communist side? He's living right at the border.
He was a pretty intelligent fellow. He thought that the government side, for family reasons, had terribly mishandled the 1963 Hue incident. And he is the first person who actually told me that the problem was not Ngo Dinh Khan. The problem had been Ngo Dinh Thuc. Because he said Ngo Dinh Thuc,
the archbishop,
had been made archbishop in Hue, and it had been celebrated with Vatican flags and things. I forget exactly when, but he said several days before the Buddha birthday holiday.
Yes.
And the Buddhists were offended because they were not allowed to fly their flags, and Ngo Dinh Thuc, he said, more than Ngo Dinh Khan, had pushed for a heavy police response. I thought that was all, educative for me. Not terribly helpful in the end because nobody.
So that seems to me like those are internal issues rather than between the nationalists and the communists. We've been talking about these things.
Yeah, but I think it made it more difficult for the nationalists to deal with the communists. See, the communists, generally speaking, presented a united front, even though there might be internal frictions with respect to personalities or difference of opinion, but they were, relatively speaking, a more united front, I think. Whereas the non-communists, I think, were unfortunately fractured. Now, with time, maybe it could have been ameliorated, if not reduced to irrelevancy, but we ran out of time. See, and just as the people in Vietnam had had difference of opinions, on the American side also, we were relatively fractured.
You're talking about the American.
On the American side, yeah, I think that we didn't have the kind of pulling together that we needed, and some of the Americans who I think were capable of doing that. I think Rufus Phillips certainly did. For example, I mean, he had institutional loyalty and regard, but Rufus wanted to get people to work together. There were some important differences of opinion. You look at the CIA station chief, Pierre de Silva, for example, and Frank may have some thinking about this, but I personally liked Pierre de Silva. But we had a fundamental difference on how to approach the matter of specialized small units of the sort that I had worked with Nguyen Xuy Bae and Major Kelly, and I brought some instructors who've been with me in a couple of other programs up there to get it started. And I wanted localized effort. As I said to Pierre one time, that it happens that 40-man units in 3 squads is what seemed to Nguyen Xuy Bae and Kelly and me to be workable in Quang Ai, but maybe in Shadek we're going to be talking about an 18-person unit. But in any case, the effort, I think, has to be locally tailored and initiated and trained. Whereas I understood pretty quickly that for Pierre, organizationally, what he wanted to do was centralized training. He wanted a kind of one size fits all, and he wanted to do it in a national training center. So the result was that I was detailed off to work with MACV, and then later with Special Forces, and the intensive training was for rural development cadre, as they came to be called, was placed in a national training center in Vung Tau, where eventually another good friend of mine, Nguyen Bae, was put in charge after General Vin Lop had attempted to have him assassinated on a difference of opinion over corruption.
What you're describing seems to me more about the tactics. What about the ideas? I mean, the so-called idealistic thing in the mind of these people. Is there any effort going in that direction, or are you just trying to provide them between the communists and the government? Seems to both competing for satisfying the needs of the local.
My immediate interest, because of where I was sent in that period, 62 and 63, and what I was trying to do, 63, 64, 65, 66, was in the local, very much in the local. And I thought if it was correctly applied, it could have a satisfactory outcome nationally. In terms of national politics, my belief was that that would have to evolve, and I thought in every country it would have to evolve. But I thought that it would have to evolve in Vietnam, but that it probably could.